English translation, 235th contact. Saturday, 3rd February, 1990, Desert 0, A, day 04 hours.
So you are not going to let it pass visiting me today. But I am very happy about it.
It is a matter of principle for me and also a great pleasure. But for my part, it is also a need because I am of the opinion that we have a lot to deal with from our perspective towards you. In fact, in recent years, we have behaved towards you in a form that would never have been due to us, and for which you should have justly rebuked us. But you did not do that. You simply accepted and tolerated our unjust behavior towards you, except for a few exceptions. It is us all.
Please, Ta. We are nevertheless friends and moreover grown-up humans. So we do not have to warm up these issues another time, and do not have to talk about them another time. We have already done this together in our last conversations. Let us leave the old, because everything should simply be over and forgotten. Besides, I cannot blame you. Therefore, please, let us leave this subject alone.
For all of us, the whole thing is not so easy, which is why I started to talk about it one more time. Too late, we have unfortunately reflected on the fact that you are billions of years older in your origin than we are, and that you have told us about.
Well, please, let us not do that. Now I am asking you to. Please.
Thank you, my friend. Your word and your wish should come to the fore.
Thank you, but it really should be so for all future. The topic must really be finished.
I give you my word for that.
Good. Then we can finally talk about other things in all rationality now.
Let it be as you say. For my part, I would immediately have a request to make to you, which you have not paid any attention to so far. The whole thing is somewhat difficult to explain, because for your own safety, and for the sake of your peace, I cannot simply say what is necessary openly. For certain reasons, I cannot allow myself to speak an open word. Your laborious peace would be destroyed within minutes or even seconds if certain persons had knowledge of what I have to say.
That should not be such a problem, as you assume, because if necessary, you can simply replace the spoken word with a series of dots in the contact report, and thus leave everything out and not write it down. Or I can later cover over and look out for the corresponding places for the copy.
Of course, you have had to do that several times before.
Exactly. Then say what depresses you.
Note Ptah from 24.6. 2004. In the meantime, the situation has arisen in such a manner that what is discussed below can be openly mentioned after the turn of the millennium.
This is the fact that for years you have been bearing most of the costs and expenses for the construction and maintenance of the center, as well as for the mission yourself, and financing them from your own funds, which were given to you as a personal gift. According to all the documents that you have given Quetzal for examination and my own efforts, I have been able to clarify that in recent years you have received almost Swiss francs, which were intended as personal compensation and rewards for all your previous tremendous efforts and for you personally. They were gifts for your previous efforts for various persons in Persia, India, Turkey, and Arabia whose lives you saved or whom you helped in great need.
It was not that much, because it was about francs less. But apparently, you and everyone else do not like the fact that I invested practically everything in our Simyase, Silver Star Center again. The francs were really necessary, and besides, I did not waste them senselessly. And nothing of that amount has really been wasted.
I am not talking about that either, because I know very well that you used the money very well. But it was your property, and not that of the centers or the group. This capital was really only meant for you privately, so you could have done a lot for your family. But there can be no more talk about that now, because the community can never refund this money to you again.
I did not expect that either. That means I have been able to thus invest francs so that the group no longer has to pay me back this money. The remaining francs, however, the group must pay me back. My wife knows why I cannot give this money to the group and why I have to return it in monthly installments of CHF 600 to one day pay it back to my wife. The rest of the money, however, I simply forget, as I have been doing for years with other amounts, which I put into everything and which also make up a quite reasonable sum. On the one hand, however, I can only fulfill our mission if everything functions properly, and on the other hand, if the center is really in order, in every conceivable respect. The very appearance and condition of the center is of immense importance. For order, cleanliness, and an unobjectionable state of the buildings and land, as well as the planting of the surroundings, and many other things are of crucial importance for the fulfillment of the mission. The condition of everything is already a testimony to the attitude and true character of those who are really responsible for the fulfillment of the mission. The condition of the center practically reflects the real condition of the real character of the mission in particular. As clean, as good and beautiful, as correct and as blameless as the condition of the Simyase Silver Star Center is, so is the mission and all its trappings.
Your word in the human's ear, because it corresponds so much to the correctness. Only the humans of the earth are unfortunately not too aware of this fact. This fact should be learned by all those who have not yet come close to this truth. In our case, an ancient teaching says that the true character of a thing is always expressed by its appearance and circumstances, as well as the actual inner life and the consciousness-based, psychical as well as state of character of a human being is clearly expressed by how he or she keeps order in their surroundings, shapes their surroundings and their environment, and how they perform their work. If a human has disorder in their environment, or if they do not perform their work in a regular and expedient manner, then they also have disorder in themselves, in every respect and up to psychological impairment, selfishness and lust for power, notorious lying, falsehood, perfidy and insidiousness, and much more. Those who keep disorder in any things or even just tolerate such disorder are inadequate in all things and concerns of their life, susceptible to evil and terrible things, and in any case autocratic and selfish, along with many other negative Ausartungen, matters in which the good human nature has gotten very badly out of control.
Man, you speak to me from the heart.
With which we have once again strayed from the actual topic. Namely, from the finances, the funds, which you spend as your property without hesitation and selflessly for the center and the mission, and thus, as usual, fall at a disadvantage. Of course, I acknowledge, and all the others of us do the same, your motives. But you should bear in mind that you are the one who has produced and continues to produce all the material of knowledge and teaching, etc., and that you are actually worth as much a reward for this as any other person who is paid for their work. If I look at the facts, it follows that in every respect, you are the one who performs the greatest work and pays the most for it. But it would be right for you to provide the teaching and let yourself be remunerated for it. It is simply a paradox that you do the greatest work and, in terms of financing all the necessary things, you are still very far ahead of the next in the first place, for which you are accused by envy and hate, etc., of dishonesty and exploiting and profiteering, and even worse. This is incorrect and also irrelevant. For many in the group, refuse with unfair excuses to participate financially more productively in everything necessary, although they would be entitled to an adequate share and could also bear such a share with ease according to their finances. With unfair words, however, they complain that their funds are very limited, etc., which is not the truth. For your part, However, it seems to me to be wrong for you to step in for all those who do so and to spend your own resources on them, because it would be their duty, and not yours, to pay for all that is necessary. And for years, out of kindness and modesty, you have hidden the real events from all the members of the group, so that no one today knows that you yourself have given every conceivable cent for the mission and the center. For this reason, it is now necessary that you finally inform the group about it, or at least some of the persons in charge of the board. Because one day it will, unfortunately, be necessary that some of the group members are informed about these facts. At least 3 of them need to be informed about these issues at the moment, but 5 of them would be better. At a later date, all group members should be informed of your true financial contributions to the center and mission. This should not happen until the entire core group has stabilized.
You give me real pleasure, my son, just like Booby would slap his daddy in the face. In the end, I know damn well what I owe to the mission and to the life, and therefore to the creation. On the other hand, I also live with my family in the center, and there I can butter a few centimes into the center to renovate or redesign the buildings and the surroundings and everything else. I and my family also benefit from this.
This is only conditionally true, because many years ago a decision was made by the whole group and by our intervention that you and your family have the right to live in the center free of charge for life, including all expenses for energies of all kinds and for innovations and necessary changes in the living area, etc. But you think that, despite all the immeasurable value of your work, you still have to contribute your financial means, which today also makes you the greatest contributor of all in this regard, and therefore also in this regard, at the lonely top, as you tend to say in such cases. Nevertheless, there are things in the offing for the future which would slander these facts in order to pronounce you as a liar, swindler, and deceiver. For this reason, it is necessary that you initiate some of the group members into your actual actions and explain the facts to them. But you should do this by February 20th of this year at the latest.
I do not like to talk about it anymore, so I will do it. I will give some thought to who I should initiate. There will be 5 persons on the board, and that should be enough.
As far as informing is concerned, yes, but not otherwise, if it is a matter of being maliciously denigrated again and again.
So, and from where?
The intrigues come from 3 continents: Japan, America, and Europe.
Then it is time in Japan too?
Unfortunately, yes, because for some time now unpleasant things have been happening there. 2, which are very detrimental to the truth of the teaching of the Spirit, aka creation energy teaching, and the entire creational truth. For quite some time now, persons of both sexes have been appearing in various places in Japan who indulge in lies or delusions that they have made contact with us or with other non-earthly life forms, and that they would maintain this contact. A person even claims in outrageous presumption that she can communicate with the creation itself and receive instructions from the creation. She also animates her fellow human beings in her falsehood and delusional idea in this regard if they become addicted to her. However, she does not want to be taught by other human beings who are truthfully more knowledgeable and more deeply thinking than herself.
This is very unfortunate, but I have heard about such machinations from various persons in Japan. However, I do not know the exact details yet, but I think that a lot will happen next time, if you warn me already now.
As usual, you grasp the connections very quickly and very precisely.
That is once again too much of an honor. But during our last conversations, you often enough talked about the fact that countless human beings falsely claim that they have connections of any kind to other than earthly life forms.
That is right. In Japan in particular, this fact applies because there is not a single person there who has any connections or even real contact with extraterrestrial life forms, let alone that there is a person there who has connections or contacts to higher spiritual forms or levels. The absolute nonsense of arrogance is, of course, the claim in Japan that a Japanese woman even has a connection of communicative form to the creation itself. This assertion is not only tremendously arrogant, but even outrageous against the truth and the immeasurable greatness of the creation itself.
Perhaps it would be advantageous for me if I knew who is making this monstrous assertion. Somehow, I could take a stand against it and explain the truth in the sense of the mission.
In a short time, you will be informed about everything, from Japan itself, because there are also human beings there who do not simply accept every nonsense as given and consequently rebel against it.
Then I practice patience.
That is the way of correctness.
Well, then a question. You said, as Arahat Athersata and Patahli also explained, that on the Earth at the present time it is only I who has contact with extraterrestrial life forms, higher spirit forms, and high spirit levels. How long, that is my question. How long should this state last?
My speech was not that you are the only one, but that only you, as the only person to have such contacts in official form, while 5-5, other persons have true contacts, which are in no kind and wise the same, and also not the same obligation as with you. I also explained that these 5 other persons are in no wise to be found among those who falsely claim that they have contacts with extraterrestrial life forms or with higher spiritual forms and levels.
Right, that is how you explain things. But now tell me how long the mentioned state will last.
In the context of how contacts must be understood in communicative form and in relation to messages, teachings and instructions, etc., everything, even for the further and most distant future, is limited only to the data I have already given you in our last conversations. That is to say, to the number of 1.03 persons per billion, 1,000 human beings. These 1.03 persons, however, each have only contacts in unconscious form, because they are only recipients of impulses without knowing that they receive impulses of instruction and advice from higher levels. Further contacts, however, this is clearly established by the viewers of time, will not take place with us at least in the next 761 Earth years, apart from that here and there encounters with extraterrestrial life forms take place, and also sightings of extraterrestrial flying objects can be made, which, however, altogether does not fall within the framework of contacts concerning spiritual messages and spiritual teaching and similar instructions. For the time of the next 761 years, you will therefore be the only and last contact person in this respect with us.
I do not quite understand that, for you said that the condition would only be present.
That is right, but I am speaking in the context of our concept of time. For the understanding of the human being on the earth, I must probably explain that the time of presence that I have mentioned includes the earthly term future, so that it must be explained that in the coming time of the future of the next 761 Earth years, no further, contacts with human beings on the earth will take place with us extraterrestrial or with higher spiritual forms of life or even high spiritual levels in the sense of how such contacts are understood in relation to the evolution of the spirit in an instructional way.
Man, it could not be more complicated. You turn a simple explanation into a monumental scientific work. But in order to get away from this topic, which we have often discussed in recent times, I would like to tell you something. Recently, I had a visit from Germany from a publisher who wants to translate and publish the Gary Kinder book, Light Years, into the German language. His publishing house practically only publishes writings that are esoteric, or at least intended to be esoteric. To introduce me personally to the work of the publishing house, the publisher gave me a book as a gift which deals with the allegedly mysterious tracks in the cornfields near Stonehenge in England. It is actually assumed in this crazy world that these circles in the cornfields are tracks of extraterrestrial flying vehicles, which are called UFOs by the human beings of the Earth. Another crazy theory also says that the cornfield circles, which were visible in other countries in the grass, are Earth powers, Earth magnetic effects and the like. Simply crazy what human beings fantasize about.
That is a true word. The terrestrial human being tends unusually strongly to unreal assumptions for things, occurrences, and events which they cannot rationally explain to themselves. But this is religion-related, because religious delusion permits such fantasies and delusions. But the so-called scientists are also affected by this delusion, who investigate and examine such occurrences and events of an inexplicable nature for them. In their bias, however, they are not in a position to actually fathom the truth of the alleged phenomena due to the delusion of faith that burdens them. They are misled by the simplest things and the simplest tricks, and thus arrive at unreal assumptions and unreal and inappropriate judgments. And indeed, nothing on the earth is easier to accomplish than cheating professionals and leading them behind the known light by pranks or deception, and leading them to misjudgments and misanalyses. But you know this as well as I myself, because in 1983 you were together with Quetzal in various places on the earth, including England, where you could watch with your own eyes and see how the alleged mysterious circles and other figures were created in the cornfields and in grass areas.
Yes, I remember that very well. In England we floated with Quetzal's ship about 80 meters above a cornfield, when just such legendary circular tracks were created. The tracks made a square, so to speak, with a small circle of about 3.5 to 4 meters being made at each of the four corners, and a large circle of about 15 meters in diameter being made in the middle. Young ones from a nearby village were involved in making the circles, trampling these circles into the cornfields in common. But the way they did it was quite interesting and so perfect that it gave rise to certain characteristics that would mislead any researcher or specialist if they were to seek analysis. Half the population of a village was involved in this swindle, and apparently with quite good results.
This is consistent with what you observed with Quetzal at Cheesefoot Head, Hampshire in 1983. You have seen the same or similar things with Quetzal over the years, as often as with my daughter Simyase, with whom you have seen the same events. Your observations were not limited to England, but you also saw similar things in Russia and Canada, in Brazil and America, and even in Switzerland, where you even tried yourself to unmask the machinations of the swindlers and cheaters in the matter of circular tracks, and to persuade the guilty to a confession. But unfortunately, it was the case that these swindlers and deceivers did not have the courage to meet your demand to publicly confess their shameful deeds in the press. It must also be explained that all this fraudulent track-making actually only became an epidemic after you officially distributed your photos of the tracks of our flying apparatuses, which does not mean, however, that such tracks had not already been observed and even photographed at an earlier point in time, because this was indeed the case on several occasions. Only, the Earth humans did not take much notice of it until the time when you came to the public with your precise photos. From that time on, many charlatans, swindlers, and fraudsters appeared more and more in order to forge such land tracks, partly for fun and charlatanry, and partly for the purpose of fraud and profit or prestige.
That would actually mean all that is necessary again. So we can move on to the next question that I have in stock. For quite some time now, the talk has been about UFO sightings and alleged encounters with extraterrestrial life forms, again with the human being of the Earth. Especially in Russia, a story about this had turned out to be a big one, namely in Voronezh, or what the name of the village should be. Recently, however, entire squadrons of UFOs have been ghosting through the polluted skies in Belgium as well, turning police officers into UFO persecutors. But also the population seems to be in love with the hype, as it is the case in England and several other countries on our planet. Can you tell me more about this?
Of course, but truthfully it is hardly worthwhile to say a word about it. The occurrences are partly extraterrestrial, as in Voronezh, and partly also in Belgium, but there is also something quite earthly behind them. A certain amount of attention should be paid to the extraterrestrial origin of flying apparatuses. But it is not worth talking about it either. More attention should be paid to the fact that some phenomena are related to the USA and South America, where you made your own experiences when your life was threatened. But discussing these things would not be of an advantage, so it is not worth talking about them, for your own safety.
Well, that is well enough. So behind some of this, there is also fraud and deception along with the truth. That is probably also the case here in Switzerland, with the alleged UFO sightings in Ticino.
It is no different than in other countries. In fact, if one wanted to believe the UFO believers and UFO swindlers and similar swindlers and phantoms, then the Earth would be teeming with aircraft of extraterrestrial origin. With the SOL system, however, the Earth lies so far away in a galaxy arm of the Milky Way that it is considered an enclave and has only a sparse influx of other inhabited stars. It is simply not interesting enough to be visited by foreign life forms on a large scale. Truthfully, it is practically always the same visitors from the vastness of space who fly in and out of the Earth as we do, for example. 2 to 3 times a year, perhaps strangers come to Earth.
That is clear. But what about an earlier statement by you that in the future a spaceship would officially land in the USA? I think that this was explained to me in September 1975 at the 34th or 35th contact.
Yes. To my knowledge, this explanation was given to you at the 35th contact meeting with my daughter Simya Se on September 16, 1975. In addition, I may explain to you, in the expansion of the explanation at that time, that these interests have changed thoroughly. For our part, we were able to locate the group that would have come to Earth in the future and would have made official contact with the Earth humans in America. In the knowledge of the true, unpeaceful and arrogant machinations and all other evils, which prevail in America and influence the whole world negatively, we informed those who were intended for the official establishment of contact with the terrestrial humans in America, recognized by foresight. After taking note of our information, however, that group decided not to carry out this enterprise, although it had already been decided. Consequently, this planned event does not take place because America is not yet mature enough in any wise for such contacts. But this does not preclude other strangers from coming to Earth and seeking contact.
And were the members of this group belonging to you or your federation?
No, in no wise. They are at home beyond the sun, in the same star region where the Japanese and Chinese originally also had their original homes.
Interesting. And by beyond the sun, as I found out some time ago, you do not mean our sun, SOL, but the central sun of our galaxy, our Milky Way. Is that right?
That corresponds to the circumstances. Something else was also never meant by the name beyond the sun.
For you, this is naturally a matter of course. But now another question. if you still have time.
I do not lack time today. But just today you seem to be insatiable with questions.
That may be, but there are a lot of questions. For example, I would like to know who Marianne Uehlinger was at the time of the Great Oaths and Determinations 13,500 years ago, and what is her task or function today?
You already asked me this question in confidence quite some time ago, which is why I strove for a useful clarification. But should I actually answer this for the cognizance of all?
Sure, because I think that this will be of use and will finally clear up some misunderstandings.
As you wish. Well, her name at that time was Zandala, which means the conscientious one. At that time, as a former personality, she was not, and also is not today, integrated into the group of the fallible ones, and thus also is not a part of the Codex. At that time, out of her own free will, she committed herself to the fulfillment of the mission and to the appropriate assistance of the same, but without having to be a member of the group. Her destiny lies in a voluntary and free commitment at her sole discretion, without being bound by membership in a group. Her actions and involvement are completely from her own decisions and initiatives, and at her own discretion, without having to receive instructions or guidelines from the outside or from group members, etc. An affiliation in the sense of instruction by association members, thus group members, is not included in its provision, so she cannot be instructed by group members either. You alone embody the reference person with respect to this. Her worth of acquisition and recognition is higher than what is often the case with the group members, which is why the necessary evolution for Marianne cannot be furnished on the group's side. She herself determines the kind and whys of her performance of duty and her achievements and contributions in whatever form, without being influenced by those bound to a group.
Thank you. That should be informative enough. I thank you on behalf of Marianne.
Thanks are also due to her, so from ancient times as well as for all that she profoundly strives for today.
You say that better than I could have done. In fact, I think we have a lot to thank her for both in the past and the present. But now another question again. Although I have often declared that you live on Era according to the laws of polygamy, the question is always raised whether you would not have any problems with that.
The conditions in this respect are completely different from those on the Earth. In contrast to the women of the Earth, our female powers know no jealousy and no egoism. They are unfamiliar with quarrelsomeness, and they are also aware of all the advantages that are peculiar to them in that they live in an association of several female partners and can afford mutual assistance in every respect. But they are also aware of all the advantages they enjoy by having only one spouse responsible for them, whom they are devoted to in common. Through polygamy, however, it is also given and guaranteed that it never appears that a man has a secret lover, as in monogamy it very often appears in the earth-human sense, which leads to quarrels and assaults and destroys marriages and families, because the women of the earth-humans are not aware and not big enough to grant to the man the natural creational right of polygamy allocated to him. In earlier times, however, the natural laws of polygamy were also applied correctly on the earth, before the madness of religions began to disregard this law, spread false doctrines about it, and invented a false new law on monogamy, whereby only one woman was allowed to the man, which led to adultery as well as murder and manslaughter, and to the destruction of marriage and family. But also on the earth truth will find its right again, and so it will be inevitable that sooner or later polygamy will regain its naturally conditioned right, whereby many evils, quarrels, murder, and manslaughter, as well as destruction of manifold forms, will disappear again. In this sense, You are making a new beginning for yourselves in the return of the natural laws, but unfortunately not exactly in the true sense of peace and harmony, as well as the respect and fulfillment of the creational natural laws and recommendations, which is why exemplariness is not yet given as it should be given. The defective evils lie not only on the side of the female sex, but also noticeably on the side of the male sex. The female powers, however, as it is clear, unfortunately bear witness in this respect to the most controversy and disharmony, because egoistic, autocratic, and jealous impulses are so very peculiar to them through the millennia of misdirection of education through religious influences that they are often dominated by and through such emotions, right down to the last fiber of their thinking, feeling, and acting.
However, there are also certain places on the earth where certain tribes or ethnic groups live according to the natural laws and consequently also practice polygamy.
I know this, and interestingly enough, many good things can be found in those human beings that result from polygamy. The conditions in this respect can be compared with ours, which can look back on a polygamy tradition of many millions of years. However, we have different terms for the marriage of one man and several women. For us, the term monogamy always prevails, even if the man is married to several women. The man is always in complete union with a woman, so they are always one and therefore one. But this refers to any case of a woman who lives in an alliance with a man who is married to several women. Our law says that the marriage covenant is based on a marital relationship between a man and a woman who marry together and form a covenant in order to form a unity of two. And as you know better than us or myself, a unity always comprises two opposing values or poles, thus a minus and a plus. These together result in a unity, thus in each case a man and a woman together result in a unity, because both form their own unity, so the man a positive and the woman a negative.
All this is clear to me, but unfortunately all this is still not understood on the earth by these earth twits.
I know that. Also the fact that you, of all people, suffer a lot from it, which damages your morale.
Unfortunately, that cannot be changed. You know the reasons for that. But unfortunately, the duty of the role model is not fulfilled, as it was prescribed by the sworn provision, because the emotional powers are not brought under control, and the necessary changes are not done to success.
And you are constantly undermined, and the correctness of your words and teachings are not accepted and not respected in any wise.
Unfortunately, you are right, but it will not be possible to change it, so part of this provision cannot be fulfilled.
For which the culpable have to bear heavy damage and also carry over corresponding consequences into the near future by their impulse deposits in the storage banks, thus by new regulations for the near future.
I have explained that many times before, but apparently it is just a laugh. But we should not talk about that anymore, because it does not work anyway. More important for me is a question I was asked in Japan. It refers to the fact that Japan is on the quake belt that constantly produces strong earthquakes. The question now was when the next earthquake would occur in Japan.
Actually, we should not get involved in such questions anymore, and should not answer any questions at all that do not come exclusively from you. But I want to make an exception today, which must remain one, because we do not want to and cannot get involved in new questions that are not of your own origin. So, for this time, let us still explain that our calculations and clarifications say that around the 28th of February of this year, Japan will be shaken by a new earthquake, although this quake is connected to another earthquake that will occur in America, in California, at the same time. But also, this quake is only the third part of a contiguous 3 points of a worldwide Earth buildup, because as a third event, the volcano redoubt in Alaska will also generate new enormous eruptions at about the same time. That is to say, on Wednesday, the 28th of February, and reach a record in ash ejection, whereby the ash will fall up to 200 kilometers far over the country. But it is not enough yet, because still further Earth uplift impacts and heavy volcanic eruptions will appear, also after the turn of the millennium, whereby quite particularly Asia and Europe will be affected by it. The Middle, Near and Far East and parts of southern and western Arabia and Africa, so however also the American continent of Alaska down to Tierra del Fuego. And it has to be said that all volcanoes deep in the earth are connected with each other by a magma flux network, quite contrary to the erroneous assumptions of the earthly scientists. And these magma fluxes often cause several volcanic reactions worldwide, which are then also connected with earthquakes. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions will be around the globe. Also in Switzerland, but also thunderstorms and associated catastrophes of all kinds, as it all began in autumn 1989 and will continue in the third millennium. Switzerland will not be spared either, and will suffer enormous material damage, as will be the case in many other countries bordering Europe and around the world. The material damage to nature alone, such as forest cover, etc., will reach heights never before seen, reaching billions of Swiss francs. But in the near future, there will be about 90 lives lost in the storms, while many more lives will be lost throughout the year as a result of the other natural events, not to mention the many earthquake deaths, which will cost tens of thousands of lives. Towards the end of this month, natural events will occur throughout Europe, which will go down in the chronicles of terrestrial men. The heaviest hurricanes and tornadoes of unprecedented strength in Europe will rage across this continent, wreaking havoc, destroying human lives, and killing many animals. Many human beings will live in fear and terror. And all this only because the earth human, in his or her unreasonableness and in their greed for power and profit, still has not understood that they slowly but surely destroy their homeworld and the whole nature and consecrate it to death. In fact, all these events of natural catastrophes occurring this month and also later are often based on the reasons of the criminal and delinquent destruction of the earth and its atmosphere by the irresponsible human beings of this world. Air pollution, radioactive contamination, atomic bomb tests, and the monstrous concussions of the earth thereby, poisoning of all life. Nuclear power plants with all their destructive environmental influences and the deadly radioactive pollution of the atmosphere and life forms. Gigantic artificial reservoirs and similar malicious things are often the originators of the coming events, even if this fact still does not want to be recognized by the responsible persons and the governments of the earth. The opposite is the case, because still, during and after the coming events, those responsible will open their stupid mouths and claim that the natural catastrophes have nothing to do with humans' destruction of nature and his or her urge to destroy out of irrationality and greed for power. But this is only a lie and stubborn stupidity as well as incomprehension and boundless primitiveness of all those who want to absolve themselves from guilt and who do not know any responsibility in any respect, let alone that they would be able to carry such a responsibility. Truthfully, all these liars are criminals to earthly humankind and to the planet Earth itself, regardless of whether they belong to ruling forces or to researchers, or whether they are beneficiaries of destruction or of things to be brought about. The human being, as such, must also be added to this. At least every single one of those who do not cultivate themselves in discipline and order and who do nothing to prevent overpopulation, because they continue to bear innumerable descendants in order to burden and endanger the earth and the entire earthly life. The mere weight of all those human beings who have been conceived to the extent of 529 million and populate the Earth represents an enormous burden for the Earth. The weight of all achievements of these human beings alone creates a tremendous pressure at various points in Earth's interior, which cannot be easily and effortlessly absorbed by the Earth. This creates enormous pressure points and tectonic changes where masses of human beings gather in numbers of hundreds of thousands or even millions, such as in cities and similar places. Of the enormous tonnage quantities of all buildings, vehicles and machines, etc., which occur concentratedly at certain points and produce incredible pressure values in the Earth and in the interior of the Earth. In order to create dangerous shifts and fractures in the Earth deep in its interior, that is what I want to talk about. The immense weights of the human masses at concentrated points alone are sufficient to trigger various forms of catastrophes on and around the planet. The secondary causes of which are usually earthquakes caused by the primary cause, the pressure and the displacements, etc., by the human and achieved mass of weight. This is also true in the case of large water masses, such as reservoirs and the like, which also cause earthquakes. But the Earth human does not think of all these facts. On the contrary, he or she denies these facts and continues to destroy the planet and his or her entire life, even though it is high time that all madness was stopped and disabled. Such a stop can still be carried out, but it is really high time, because the Earth can no longer be criminally destroyed by the Earth humans. Now it begins to defend itself. Point by point they are now hitting back, and this has truthfully nothing to do with what know-it-alls and conscienceless human beings cite in their defense when they claim that special natural phenomena have always passed over the Earth and that they repeat themselves from time to time, earthquakes and storms as well as the practically worldwide forest dieback, which in a very special case will be claimed by conscienceless and profit-hungry Earth humans in about 3 months' time. In a criminal manner, that the forest dieback is not half as bad as is claimed by naysayers, etc. But this is only another step in the crime against the Earth and all life. In fact, however, the coming events no longer fall within this framework of natural events alone in repetition, but are actually a defense of nature and the planet itself. A quick and purposeful conversion of the human beings is of the most urgent need, and thus also an end to all their destruction of the planet, of nature, and of all life. But even if the human being suddenly ends all their criminal actions against the planet and against life and against nature, the planet and nature as well as life will not simply be able to regenerate in a short time. What was destroyed in nature and in the planet itself alone requires a present regeneration period of 340,000 years. But more profound things, such as the regeneration of the Earth's petroleum, require many millions of years. Also, the dismantling of the artificially produced radioactive radiation by A-bombs and A-bomb tests, as well as by nuclear power plants and many other things, caused by the terrestrial human being, sometimes takes many thousands and even millions of years. The quantity and intensity of the radioactive radiation stored above the polar regions alone is much more alarming and dangerous than is the case in a nuclear power plant. Human beings who fly over the Earth's poles with aircraft absorb larger quantities of dangerous radioactive radiation in their bodies and endanger themselves with cancer and infertility than is the case with those humans who work in the direct vicinity of nuclear power plants. But now, my friend, it is enough for today. Please do not ask any more questions.
It is enough for me actually also for today. Then goodbye and greetings to everyone.
Goodbye. It takes a little longer until the next time.
Okay, goodbye. Bang, and he is gone.